Ladies and gentlemen, as usual, the typical suspects, the progressive left, have completely lost their minds over President Trump's recent capture of Nicholas Maduro. Of course they're saying that President Trump violated the U.S. Constitution. Of course they're saying that President Trump needed congressional approval. To the surprise of none of us, many of them are defending the actions of Nicholas Maduro himself. And that's why it's a good thing that our fearless Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, personally took a trip down to the liberal NBC News to set these fools straight. And you're going to want to stick around to the end of the video because that's when Marco really puts this news commentator in her place. So yep, it's going to be a great video. So if you don't mind doing me a favor, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, feel free to leave a comment. Maybe you want to tell me that you enjoyed the video, or maybe you want to tell me that I have terrible hair. It's okay. I have thick skin. I can handle it. So with the intro out of the way, what do you say we dive right into the first clip?
Is the United States now at war with Venezuela?
There's not a war. I mean, we are at war against drug trafficking organizations. It's not a war against Venezuela. We are enforcing American laws with regards to oil sanctions. We have sanctioned entities. We go to court. We get a warrant. We seize those boats with oil, and that will continue. We would continue to reserve the right to take strikes against drug boats that are bringing drugs towards the United States that are being operated by transnational criminal organizations, including the Cartel de los Sols. Of course, the leader of that cartel, is now in U.S. custody and facing U.S. justice in the Southern District of New York, and that's Nicholas Maduro.
So as you can see, Marco came out firing, slamming home the fact that we are not at war with Venezuela, we're just simply at war with drug trafficking organizations. And why wouldn't we be? Countless Americans have died as a direct result of Maduro shipping fentanyl and other drugs into the United States. Okay, now what do you say we talk about all of these left-wing nut so-called experts that always seem to get everything incorrect?
Most of the experts that people have on television, I watch these experts and it's clown hour. Okay, these are people that have focused their entire career on the Middle East or some other part of the world because that's where all the action was. Very few of them know anything about Venezuela or the Western Hemisphere. Venezuela looks nothing like Libya. It looks nothing like Iraq. It looks nothing like Afghanistan. It looks nothing like the Middle East other than the Iranian agents that are running through there plotting against America. Okay? These are Western countries with long traditions among their at a people-to-people and cultural level and ties to the United States. So there's nothing like that. So I think people need to stop ascribing the apples and oranges here, the apples of the Middle East to the oranges of the Western Hemisphere.
But do you...
Number two, this is about the national interest of the United States. And what I'm confident of is we are in a safer and better place because we're taking it seriously. The alternative would have been to leave Maduro there as an indicted drug trafficker, illegitimate president, running the country, open invitation for all of our adversaries to do whatever they want against the United States from Venezuela. That was not going to continue. The alternative would have been to allow a drug trafficker to continue to use national territory and elements of nation-state power to further drug trafficking organizations. Read the indictment. This guy used the levers of their security apparatus not to arrest drug traffickers, but to cooperate and facilitate the trafficking of drugs for the purpose of getting them into the United States. And that's going to stop.
Marco sure nailed that one. Clown hour is absolutely correct. But do you want to know what the craziest part is? We can spend all of our time and money in Ukraine, other parts of Europe, the Middle East, or many other parts of the world, and you won't hear a peep from the left. But because it's an operation that President Trump has spearheaded, of course, it's a cataclysmic event. And Venezuela is in our backyard, not on the other side of the world, so we're directly affected. Now, you may have heard that the number one reason why we invaded Venezuela was because of the drugs, but let's shift gears and talk about something that President Trump has been completely transparent about: the oil.
If the purpose of the operation was to capture Maduro and bring him to justice, why does the United States need to take over the Venezuelan oil industry?
Well, we don't need to. First of all, let me go back up. We don't need Venezuela's oil. We have plenty of oil in the United States. What we're not going to allow is for the oil industry in Venezuela to be controlled by adversaries of the United States. You have to understand, why does China need their oil? Why does Russia need their oil? Why does Iran need their oil? They're not even in this continent. This is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live. And we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be a base of operation for adversaries, competitors, and rivals of the United States.
Have specific oil companies?
We also want to see that oil and the proceeds from it. Hold on. We want to see the oil proceeds of that country benefit the people of Venezuela. Why have 8 million people left Venezuela? 8 million, the single largest mass migration probably in modern history, left Venezuela since 2014 because all the wealth of that country was stolen to the benefit of Maduro and his cronies in the regime, but not to the benefit of people of Venezuela. You know how destabilizing 8 million migrants is? The number one fear that Brazil has, that Colombia has, that all these countries in the region have about what's happening in Venezuela and our involvement is they're afraid of another mass migration event. That's what they fear. This is deeply destabilizing stuff. It's not going to continue to happen. They are not going to come from outside of our hemisphere, destabilize our region in our own backyard, and us have to pay the price for it. Not under President Trump.
To those of us who have our eyes open, it's no secret, and it has been obvious for years, that the Chinese Communist Party has been supporting Maduro's regime in Venezuela, including selling them weapons and buying up his black market sanctioned oil, all to keep the regime afloat. This represents a direct national security threat to the United States. As Secretary of State, Marco made it very clear those days are over, not in our backyard and not under President Trump. Now to answer a very big question.
Who is in charge? Are you running Venezuela right now?
Yeah, I mean, I keep people, fixating on that. Here's the bottom line on it is we expect to see changes in Venezuela. Changes of all kinds, long-term, short-term. We'd love to see all kinds of changes, but the most immediate changes are the ones that are in the national interest of the United States. That's why we're involved here, because of how it applies and has a direct impact on the United States. Okay, we are not going to be able to allow in our hemisphere a country that becomes a crossroads for the activities of all of our adversaries around the world. We just can't allow it. We can't have a country where the people in charge of its military and in charge of its police department are openly cooperating with drug trafficking organizations. We're not going to allow that. These things are direct threats to the United States, and we intend to use every element of leverage that we have to ensure that that changes. The one I would point everyone to is that our military is helping the Coast Guard conduct a law enforcement function, which is not just the capture of Maduro, but the enforcement of our sanctions. We go to court, we get a warrant, we seize the boats. And we think this is tremendous leverage, incredible, crippling leverage, which we intend to continue to use until we see the changes that we need to see that are benefit to the American people. And by the way, we believe to the people of Venezuela as well.
So what we can glean from this clip is that no bones about it, we're done putting America last. We're going to do what's best for America and what's best for American citizens. And of course we want to help the citizens of Venezuela who've been kept as prisoners. But first and foremost, the Donro Doctrine is back in place and no more apologies for putting America first.
We want Venezuela to move in a certain direction because not only do we think it's good for the people of Venezuela, it's in our national interest. It either touches on something that's a threat to our national security or touches on something that's either beneficial or harmful.
And are you involved in that transition,
so obviously
Secretary?
I'm very involved in this. Well, of course. I mean, I think everyone knows I'm pretty involved on politics in this hemisphere. Obviously, as Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, very involved in all these elements. The Department of War plays a very important role here, along with the Department of Justice, for example, because they're the ones that have to go to court. So this is a team effort by the entire national security apparatus of our country, but it is running this policy. And the goal of the policy is to see changes in Venezuela that are beneficial to the United States, first and foremost, because that's who we work for.
Sounds like a team effort to me. We got the Department of State and National Security Council, the Department of War, Department of Justice, all ensuring a peaceful transition of power to the Venezuelan people. I wonder how long this change is going to take to make.
Continue. Those things cannot continue to be in place. You cannot continue to have the largest oil reserves, in the world under the control of adversaries of the United States, not benefiting the people of Venezuela and stolen by a handful of oligarchs around the world, including inside of Venezuela, but not benefiting the people of that country. We've seen how our adversaries all over the world are exploiting and extracting resources from Africa, from every other country. They're not going to do it in the Western Hemisphere. Yeah. They're not. That is not going to happen under President Trump. Read our national security strategy. He is serious about it, and he's going to do something about it, and we're doing something about it.
So let's see if I got this correct. First, no flooding the United States with gang members and deadly drugs. Next, Do not allow Venezuela to become a hub for countries that operate against us. And last, do not leave the world's largest oil reserves under the control of America's enemies while the Venezuelan people gain nothing. That makes a lot of sense to me. So just how successful of a mission was it?
This was, in essence, at its core, a law enforcement function. Okay, the Department of Justice, dating back in the Biden administration, that had a $25 million reward for his capture. So we have a reward for his capture, but we're not going to enforce it. That's the difference between President Trump and everybody else. It's easy to make a wanted poster and say $50 million for the capture of Maduro, but no one takes that seriously because you're not going to do anything about it. President Trump did something about it.
Let me ask you.
He did something about it. We went in, we grabbed him, he was arrested, and he's now in New York. No Americans were killed, no equipment was lost. It had to be done, and it's been done. And I assure you, the people left behind in Venezuela now that are in charge of the police and everything else, I assure you, they're going to probably be a lot more compliant than Maduro was as a result of it.
So the Biden administration was successful in basically making a $5 million wanted poster, whereas President Trump actually did what he said he was going to do. This is F around and find out at its finest. If you remember, Maduro and his regime were doing all kinds of trash talking, and so were other neighboring countries such as Colombia. Now notice, crickets. On a different topic, the Democrats are actually very convincing about this whole needing congressional approval thing, so we should let Marco set the record straight on that.
This was not an action that required congressional approval. In fact, it couldn't require congressional approval because this was not an invasion. This is not an extended military operation. This is a very precise operation that involved a couple of hours of action. It was a very delicate operation, too. It was one that required all these conditions to be in place at the right time in the right place. You couldn't afford leaks. We couldn't afford anything out there that would have endangered the mission and gotten people killed or killed off the mission and the optionality. We didn't even know if the mission was going to happen. How can you notify something you're not even sure if it can happen? Because in order for it to happen, you needed to have weather conditions in place. He needed to be at the right place at the right time. We needed to have forces prepared to go. There were a lot of factors in place. It was a trigger-based operation. But you can't notify that, number one, because you don't even know if it's going to happen, if those conditions will ever align. And number two, you can't risk it being disclosed. But this was not an attack on Venezuela. This was a law enforcement function to capture an indicted drug trafficker. And of course, we needed the Department of War to support it because they do have anti-aircraft missiles that could shoot down those helicopters.
But
we had to take down radars. We had to take down those anti-air elements on the way in and on the way out. And that's what this was limited to.
But will you seek congressional approval for any further action in Venezuela or the region?
Well, we will seek congressional approval for actions that require congressional approval. But otherwise, they will get congressional notification. And this is not an operation that required congressional approval. In fact, this is an operation akin to what virtually every single president for the last 40 years has conducted. The difference is that when it's Donald Trump, all these Democrats go bonkers.
So there you have it, folks. Congressional approval is not required for this action. Plus, with the track record of our Congress, both parties, do you think we really could trust them with this sensitive information? I shudder to think how quickly this information would have been leaked. Now you got Barack Obama had Osama bin Laden killed in Pakistan. Hillary Clinton and Barack had Gaddafi killed in Libya. Joe Biden killed the leader of Al-Qaeda. Not a word was said and no approval from Congress was necessary. But when President Trump apprehends a narco-terrorist and brings them back to the United States to face criminal charges, of course the left loses their mind. Just absolute hypocrites. But we're used to this. But everyone, that's going to be a wrap for this video. I really hope you enjoyed watching Marco destroy this liberal news commentator. If you did, please smash that like button, subscribe, and while you're down there, please leave a comment. I would really love to hear what you guys think. I thank you all very much for your time. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and wherever you are, keep smiling.